Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Lifters League podcast. My name's Ben Ashmole. I'm here with my co-host Gus Cooke. And basically we started this podcast because, Gus, you're an elite powerlifting coach, strength coach. I love this shit and I'm an amateur. I'd love to learn more. And we figured we'd start this podcast just to talk through everything and anything to do with lifting. And we're going to basically cover some amazing subjects going forward in the future. And we're also going to have some amazing guests, world-leading guests coming through to talk about various things to do with lifting. So it should be awesome. So we thought we'd start episode 1 around nutrition. Just having a general chat around nutrition for lifters. It's a big subject. Everybody's got a different opinion on what diet to follow, what works. You know, you've got all your fad diets, you've got keto, carb cycling. Everywhere you go, there's a different opinion. So obviously, Gus, because you're obviously used to working with world-class elite powerlifters, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on nutrition, kind of what your process is, and where you start there.
I think there's 2 major points to start with. What makes it successful, a lot of my powerlifters, is first, always remember the fundamentals of nutrition. It gets overly complicated. You know, it is about calorie balance, which gets sometimes can get overlooked.
Right.
The other thing is starting with, I guess the approach we take is the most holistic approach possible, where we'll start with looking at the things that they're doing with food itself, rather than trying to branch into some sort of crazy supplementation scheme or or any sort of special foods. It's basically the simple foods such as meat, rice, vegetables that need to be put into the diet first, and a correct balance of calories and macronutrients. Are there some specific things you guess you wanted to dive into?
Yeah, so one sec, just move the mic. Sorry, we could just keep going. Sorry, a bit of a mic check there. So I think one important thing you mentioned there, and this is not something that most people like to pay attention to, but the calorie balance side of it. I think personally, I've tried everything, right? I've tried everything. I'm a personal researcher, right? So I'm one of those people who go online, spend fucking hours Googling, looking at all the gurus.
I think sometimes that's the problem. Sometimes is that it's hard to be your own coach. It's hard to be your own nutritionist. It's hard to see things objectively, and so this comes, I guess, to some of the initial things that we might do with an athlete, is that look at their basically it sounds simple, but let's look at their goal.
Yeah.
And not only their short-term goal, but their long-term goal and what they want to achieve over their entire career. Because we have a tendency that we become quite reactive with multiple short-term goals over a long-term period.
Yeah.
So if we have a competition coming up and we want to, let's say in the long term you want a 1,000 kilo total, or one of the girls wants to hit a 600 kilo total. We can't keep sitting in a direction or be subject to what our weight is at the time or something. So it's quite common that girls would want to stay in a lighter weight class. And same thing with guys.
Yeah.
They want to stay in a lighter weight class, but their training is demanding more muscle growth, which then requires more food. Their training output has to increase, which requires more food. And this balance starts to become a lot higher than what people might perceive to be a normal diet. So you would have the standard protocol of 2,500 calories or 3,000 calories.
Yeah.
Where most of my competitive powerlifters are anywhere between 4,000 and 6,000 calories, just to maintain progression. In their training. So there's a lot more food that powerlifters need to be eating. Actually, a great example of that is, I guess, I was one of the first, say, strength coaches to introduce nutrition into the powerlifting world.
Right.
So when I first started as a coach, as a powerlifter, I had a background in bodybuilding.
Yeah, okay.
And that led to bringing some science that I learned from sports nutrition into the powerlifting world.
Yeah.
The powerlifting at that time was still just growing. So as a coach, I ended up becoming quite big at the time. I think at one point I had 120 clients training athletes from gyms from nearly every single state.
Do you think one of your biggest differentiators was the fact that you addressed the nutrition?
At the start,
when
I first started, for the first probably 3 years of my career, was nutrition.
I remember it still kind of got that feel about it. But when you think powerlifting, people think huge guys, just all you want to do is pack on size as much, just get as big as possible. Don't worry about the nutrition. You just want to eat as much as possible, eat as much shit as you want. It's just about lifting big, right?
It was the culture. Donuts, pizzas, calories. It was just calories. I mean, there's this podcast I used to listen to, and it used to be a running joke that they would look for the best calorie dollar ratio. So they'll go to McDonald's, and they saw that the biggest calorie per dollar was the fillet fish, but tastes like shit.
Right. Okay.
But they didn't care because per dollar they were getting 400 calories.
Fuck. I remember seeing. God, I can't remember where I saw it. It was on a forum somewhere. I think it was called the Go Mad diet, where it was basically just milk, right? So you just buy gallons of milk because obviously there's lots of fat going on in there. Just lots of full milk, and people were literally drinking 3 liters a day.
That was a thing that people would have milk through their training, so they'll carry like a 3 liter bottle of milk and drink it throughout their training.
Fuck me.
But here's the thing. Like it worked. I mean, for their specific goals, they wanted to get big. You know.
Oh, in terms of just throwing on weight,
it's far more intelligent now.
Right.
So some of the trends I'm starting to see is that we're getting more specialized areas focusing on very particular subjects within powerlifting. So, powerlifting was a single culture of just powerlifting.
Yeah.
Then you'd see some of the, nutritionists come over or dietitians come over into that space and improve powerlifting as a sport. Then you'll start to see the physiotherapists and exercise scientists come over to improve the injury prevention of the sport. And this is where the sport has kept developing over time, because we have more specialties coming in to hone in very specific parts of the sport to, accelerate it. And I would say that's kind of the same thing here, is that I've had to improve on all areas, not just powerlifting itself.
100%. So what my question from that in there is what are the differences nutrition wise from power? My observation is that a lot of powerlifters get their nutrition mixed up with people. They get it mixed up with the bodybuilding side a lot. What I'm getting at is people tend to eat to be lean and look good, right?
So it says that people always find to see that people treat training and nutrition sometimes as separate.
Yeah.
But the thing that it's not. They have to work together. So people would diet to try and they'll diet like a bodybuilder,
right,
to get as lean as possible.
Got you.
To lose as much weight as possible, or to try and make a weight class. But they're not realizing that their training is suffering.
Yeah.
Because they're supposed to work as a synergistic system. Nutrition, in terms of when you look at powerlifting as a whole, you have the training stimulus, and then you also have recovery. They're the only two variables that we're working with, and nutrition is the recovery. And if we're not eating enough to support the recovery from training stimulus, then you don't progress. Your body composition might change.
Yeah.
However, the performance you're getting from your training won't improve. And then it kind of starts to work together that if your training's not improving, then your body composition won't improve. So you won't build muscle mass. So this is kind of leads into a subject where I've managed to improve people's body composition, get very, very, very lean, still get very, very strong in a calorie surplus.
Right. So that's really interesting, because the general wisdom of people who, I presume, don't really know what they're talking about, is that the only way to really change body composition in terms of body fat would be, most people go for a calorie deficit, right? And I know a lot of the results you got at your gym, you had insane results with people who wanted to be shredded, right? But you were telling them all to eat more, so you can train more, right?
Mm-hmm. So
right?
People confuse changes in body composition with weight loss. So weight loss requires a calorie deficit regardless. It's the laws of thermodynamics.
Got you.
All right?
Yeah,
require more energy output to lose mass. Now, composition, however, is just the composition of that mass. And that can be manipulated in various ways. It's mostly chemistry, recovery, stimulus, all sorts of things that happen inside the body. Now, getting lean can happen through various processes. It doesn't require you just to be in a deficit. So as we would both know that certain states of the body or certain energy systems utilize body fat in quite a utilize body fat more effectively than something like something that's high intensity,
right?
Which would use more, I guess, glycogen stores.
Got you.
However, something like training improves, like weight training in particular, and building muscle mass in particular. I would always say that it has an impact on their basal metabolic rate. So the amount of calories they're utilizing throughout the day. So, or just at rest. So if someone's basal if someone is, how do I explain this? If we're not building muscle, we have we would find that their basal metabolic rate would start to drop, and therefore require less calories to progress or do more training.
Right, okay.
If I increase calories, right, we'd sometimes get an adaptation to their basal metabolic rate to increase. The training that we do, the kind of training we do with weight training, builds muscle, which increases the basal metabolic rate as well. It also increases mitochondrial output, depending on the type of training we might do. So we might do some high-intensity cardio-based weight training. So I guess my cardio-based weight training would be sleds or prowlers, or weighted carries.
Love a prowler,
and it would have this benefit of stimulating to either maintain muscle or increase muscle size, whilst having a positive impact on your metabolic output.
Right. Okay.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are various complex processes that happen inside the body that can manipulate that composition.
Right.
I think one point to remember is that I don't try and measure every stimulus or measure every adaptation that's occurring in the body, except I measure things on a macro scale,
right,
and then assess in micro scales as we go, or try to come up with explanations to the changes in a micro scale.
Right. So that's interesting. That was what I was going to ask. Right. So what I was going to say was, how do you track? Are you as a coach, right? And this is the benefit of having a coach, who knows what they're doing. Are you in control? How many variables are you in control of, or are you just basically going off training outcomes and working back from there?
So I always have the true fundamental measurements, where you can over obsess about so many variables, and each of them, the problem you have a tendency of paralysis by analysis is that you'll start to be quite reactive to each individual variable. So what I tend to do is look at the two macro scale measurements. Has your performance increased? So does squat, bench, and deadlift increase?
Yep.
And have we improved body composition? The two variables you measure there is muscle mass and fat. Fat mass.
Yeah.
Everything along the way, all the measurements I have along the way, make micro decisions on where I need to head me towards that trajectory. So I'll take all this information to come up with an idea, basically what is happening. And if I test that idea, or if I do something and can predict its outcome, then I know that following week or the following month, if we do achieve the goal I predicted, then I know I'm more likely to be right And this is the basis of the scientific method. Is
right. So that's the difference. That's your difference, and I think that goes back to the point you were making before about people using kind of short-term knee-jerk goals. The benefit of having a coach who really knows what they're doing is that you're basically treating every human being you train as a scientific experiment. It's all trial and error, right? Like, and it's all over a long period of time. You're always tweaking it, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think those are all the things. There's this thing I do is called, what's well known in strength and conditioning is periodization.
Yep.
Is that we look at the 1 year to 4 year goal. It's generally known as a 4 year cycle because of the Olympics.
Yeah.
I haven't found a need to go up to 4 years, but I do go 1, maybe 2 years if they're really advanced.
Right. Okay.
And I'd have also, I guess, a kind of a mission statement, which is what their long term goal is. So it might be to be the best powerlifter there is in the world, or something like that. And that should guide every micro decision you make. Is it for that goal or is it against that goal?
Right.
And so you can start to look at this more objectively when people start saying, "Oh, I want to lose 10 kilos." You know, why? Is that counterproductive or productive to that long-term goal?
Yeah, got you.
Because we need to have this constant, whether it can be slow as long as we're heading in the direction we're going. I'll have people who have come to me who've been training for 10 years and still haven't made any more progress than someone who's done this for 1 year. And that's because they're hyper reactive to everything that they do. They'll increase muscle mass. It's like, oh, I feel fat. I'm going to lose.
That is me. That's me. So I'm one of those people. I think I'm not the only one. I think most people are. I train by myself. I've got all my gear in my garage, right? And I'm into all of the science. Yeah. So I went the paralysis by analysis thing, but I change up my routine and my diet. Sometimes it's monthly, right? Because you don't feel. The only time I've ever had significant results, I'm having decent results at the moment, is just adherence and consistency. Because I think a lot of people, that's the other problem, right? That if we circle back to the nutrition, they expect after a month of eating kale that they're just going to be a superhuman, right? And they're going to be completely shredded. But then what happens is what happened with me? So my body reacts really well to keto. I tried it. It worked really well. I lost a load of body fat. My lifting numbers went through the floor. Yes, it fucking sucked. Honestly, it was for training. It was the worst thing. It was the worst thing ever. So what happened was, I got lean, and then I was like, a month later, I was like, fuck, okay, numbers are going down. I'll up the numbers, and then I put on body fat again. It's just like a seesaw thing. There was no consistency in it, you know. So it's like.
This is where you have to have the objectivity of someone else to tell your truth. I can't do my own diet or training. You know,
interesting.
I have to have someone else do it. And I basically switch my mind, change, I guess, what I think in my mind as a coach compared to an athlete. So as a coach, yes, I'm constantly analyzing their progress whilst I'm keeping them focused on the track. So now when it's my turn, when someone's coaching me, I don't look into it. Okay.
Right.
I become a meathead, you know, and I don't worry about analyzing everything because I know the same thing with my coaches, with my clients or my athletes is that the sole focus is with their mindset to training is, well, first being consistent and disciplined with their diet and that they have good training intent. So they're coming in with purpose and they're coming in to train hard and not to be over analytical about everything that they're doing, that they're just ticking the basics every single time.
Right. Okay. So on that, right? This is the question: have any of your athletes achieved kind of like the magic bullet in terms of diet? Like, are there any that are lifting big and still eating the donuts? And have you ever trained anybody with a objectively bad diet?
Yeah, heaps.
Right. Okay.
So my approach would be different to everyone depending on their goal.
Got you.
Okay. Yeah. So, I guess I have two contrasts. I had one client who I prepared for a bodybuilding competition. Right. She won the Victorian State championships and IFBB.
Right. Okay. Wow.
The lowest we went is 1,900 calories right into the day of the competition. We got down to 9% body fat. So she was.
How much did she weigh?
I think she was about 63.
Wow. So
kilos.
1,900 is not low at all, is it?
That's fairly high.
Yeah.
Or considered comparing to.
Yeah, of course.
And so there's the things like I read a post about this the other day, is that I never let the dogma of bodybuilding methodology to influence decisions I make, which are based off scientific principles.
Yeah.
And not just scientific principles in terms of being able to, compare to referenced experiments or work, more that I treat each person as an individual and use the scientific principles to kind of come up with my own hypotheses about each individual and about every step, and looking at every step, doing that every step of the way. So, knowing that, you don't have to drop calories to make that progress. So actually a great story with that is that we got down to 9% at 1,900 calories.
Yeah.
She also deadlifted 205 kilos 1 month out from competition. Our sole goal was to maintain strength. You maintain strength, you maintain muscle.
Yeah, of course.
Now, there was a bit of issues. I mean, with her partner at the time, and he took over her coaching coming into the second competition. He dropped her calories down.
Yeah,
and she lost conditioning. She didn't have as much fullness and size in her body, and she ended up placing 6th in the next competition.
Okay, right.
Even though it was 6 weeks apart, you can improve massively in 6 weeks, but she didn't improve, dropping her calories. Now, you drop calories, performance drops. So this becomes a fine balance between the two. This is where I also have to gather a lot of subjective information about their motivation level. So motivation is quite directly correlated to. It's quite loud.
Sorry about that. We're in a gym and a ridiculously old truck just drove past. So sorry about that. Go on.
What was I saying? There's.
You have to work out their goals and their ability to stick to it, their adherence.
I forget what I was talking about.
Mate, yeah. So, all right, let's circle back there. Okay, so this athlete you were working with dropped calories, okay, which is the traditional. I don't know why it's traditional, but the traditional knowledge of how you make a cut. Yeah, you drop calories.
So that reminds me now. So, looking at some of the subjective information,
right,
such as motivation. Motivation's a big one,
right?
So, how motivated someone is to come into the gym can be correlated with their ability to recover from something.
Got you.
So, if you're starting to get to a point where training is being overreached, then motivation tends to drop, not on purpose. So a lot of these athletes will still have drive, but then I would say I would have a listen to what their intent is in training, or how they're feeling, like their energy levels or their mindset, what they're thinking at the time. And that gives me a bit of information about their recovery. So do I need to, and then what recovery methods can I take? Can I reduce training? Can I increase food? Or should I change the load in the training?
Right.
So, but at the same time, I'm still looking at their caloric output. So, or not just caloric output, but then also would also see what impacts I'm having on their body. So if I'm increasing volume or intensity, I try to maintain that intensity without changing any other variables. So if I increase volume of work, then we see a particular outcome, right, and it's positive, then we can, I guess, maintain that trajectory without having to keep dropping calories or doing anything else. So utilizing other methods to try and manipulate body composition rather than just constantly cutting calories. And you can use a lot of biofeedback to try and understand what decision to make and why that's happening. So that's why that motivation one, it's just one of many you might use. Yeah. But that motivation one tells you what is happening, that you need to improve recovery because of is it overstimulus? Now, you can look at other things as well, as that you might have an overstimulus in training, but there are some things that work on the same, what we call as the sympathetic nervous system. We have training that impacts the sympathetic nervous system, but also stress at work. So if their workload's increased, but training hasn't changed, then it doesn't make sense that the training is impacting that. So you might focus on, okay, can we reduce the workload or the stress load that you're doing?
Yep.
So we might start looking at their lifestyle, and then that will start to improve their body composition. So when there's so many things,
right? Okay,
so many other variables you can look at, and it's not just about calories. And the other big thing is that people want self-satisfaction quickly. So when you're saying that you did that diet for a month,
well, I ended up doing it for a few months. So it was weird. Like I got really lean, which is awesome. I'm not naturally a lean person, right? So I felt awesome. I looked pretty good. Training was shit. I was losing body mass. I was losing muscle.
But what did you have to do to sustain that? And that becomes the next question. Is that a sustainable approach that you just taken to do that?
Yeah. So interesting. It wasn't right. So like you kind of get used to it.
Yeah.
Right. And by keto, I was just avoiding carbs just wherever possible. I wasn't particularly loading up on the fat too much. I wasn't like eating sticks of butter or fucking people chugging coconut oil and stuff like that. Wasn't anything like that. I just basically removed carbohydrate from a diet, whether it be any starchy sauce, potatoes, vegetables. So it was just greens, meat.
So for you, if you came into me as a client, we'll look at all the small things we can improve. And then just measure its progress within a week. So you can make your significant progress in 1 week, or measurable progress, but you wouldn't be able to visually see what's happening. So that could be just some of the consistency you might be taking day to day, just some of the types of food, some of the calorie dense foods you might be taking. And we look at how that works within your lifestyle. Now, let's say there are times where we might have to go really difficult. Let's say you might go into a keto diet, which I've done with many athletes. But you've got to have an action plan coming out. So we have something that creates change, but then we have to have something that creates that new, what's known as kind of that set point.
Right.
How do we maintain that body composition? So we start to look at things that will get your body to adapt being leaner. And
that's it. I mean, that's it. As soon as I came off it, I yo-yoed like the one thing that happened was because it's not the best thing lifestyle wise, right? Like if I love to eat, I love good wine, love good food. Big part of my relationship with my wife is we go out for meals all the time. It's fucking hard to constantly find a low carb option all the time, right? But then what happens is I've got an addictive personality. When it comes to food, I have a tendency to engorge myself. Like I'm one of those people, if I fall off the truck, right, I fall off fucking hard. I go all the way down, right? So I'll have a piece of chocolate, and the psychology of it is, well, I fucked up now, so I might as well fuck up as much as I possibly can, and then on Monday I'll go back to it, kind of thing. So anyway, I fell off the wagon. I was like, I'll give it a shot. I just started smashing all the worst things, and you just yo-yo back the other way. And what happened was over 6 months, my net gain was 0. I was just back to where I started. I was just lean for 3 months and struggling in terms of lifestyle, and then I was back where I started 3 months later.
It's the thing. So you look at some of the everything that the body wants to do mentally, physically, how you feel, all of that are signals. That your body is telling you. Now, for you, it's just emotions that you react to. My job is to look at this more objectively. So, if we get in a response of cravings for something or something where you start eating and constantly start to eat, what's the problem here? Okay, and a lot of that is to do with first. Let's say look at the person's relationship with food. Now, why is that relationship there? You know, we're having this reward relationship that we punish ourselves with food. We get this reward of change in body composition. And when we don't do that, we fail. However, we got to start looking at this from a different different perspective. If we have that tendency, what I tend to do is overfeed the athlete in the first place. And
right, okay.
Now when we overfeed them with foods that are going to be more beneficial, but they won't start to have as strong cravings,
of course,
for things.
Right, yeah.
The energy levels will start to increase when they have that piece of chocolate. Generally, they don't want to keep going. They're already quite satisfied or full.
Right.
The body isn't in demand to want to gain weight or in demand for calories. So with this improved nutrition composition, we get improved training, then we have then our body composition starts to change.
A motivational improvement. I mean, there is nothing less motivating than being on a calorie deficit and lifting heavy. It's just, especially if I found it had a massive psychological impact on me, because you just could never hit the weights you should be. So you just, I mean, one of the biggest thing from lifting from me is we all lift for that moment where you hit a personal best or you make an improvement, you add 2.5 kgs or whatever it is. That's kind of what you do it for, right? The constant progression. If you're on a calorie deficit, right, and your training suffers and you feel weak, mate, your motivation is, I was shot. I started skipping days and everything.
Yeah. And that's the feedback you got to listen to.
Right. Yeah.
Why is this happening? And, what are some of the small things we can do to make that change? And it was also the same thing that I do as a coach is that, I have to feed that client's or that athlete's reward system.
Right.
You're not going to see results straight away, but how can I get you to have that sort of feedback? So we can start looking at things like what kind of training do you enjoy? What parts of training do you want to improve? We can make small measurements within your progress that's measurable, but you might not see physically. So they would say, cool, on paper here, you are improving. We keep in this trajectory. We're going to hit our goal.
Yeah.
So those small bits of reward along the way helps an athlete also stay on track.
So do you have any elite lifters who've come to you with? I mean, I know all of them will have some kind of manipulation needed in the diet and nutrition for the training. But have you had any elite lifters come to you, or people who've become elite with serious issues in this area, where you've had to make massive changes and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, very much, very, very much, and from different areas as well. So I've had people with severe body image and eating disorders, yeah,
that's a common one. Like, people have to, if you can't see it in the mirror, then it doesn't. That's another thing. You psychologically geared to what it looks like in the mirror, but the problem is what you see isn't in reality. That's where the eating disorder comes in, right? Because even though you could be getting leaner, or I can imagine for females this would be 10 times worse because of the social pressures. Guys as well, fucking.
It's just as bad as with guys as with girls.
Fucking everybody's got to look. Because every time you pick up a Men's Health, it's like how to fucking look like Hugh Jackman. It's like all this shit, right? But the problem is your brain tricks you into thinking, even if you do look that way, your brain tricks you into thinking that you don't anyway. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Like,
so it's kind of a touchy subject, and you got to look at what the role of a strength coach is when it comes to something like this. The first thing is that, do they recognize they have that problem? If they don't, it can be quite tricky.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So you can pick up. The first thing is that I generally, you start to pick up certain behaviors and stuff like that. And I would program in various ways with their diet and their training to start heading them in the right direction. And then get also at the same time, as we're heading in that direction, get them to express, I guess, how they feel about what is happening mentally.
Yep.
And this is just, listening. I'm not trying to be their therapist.
Yeah.
I'm trying to head them in the right direction in terms of eating behaviors, and trying to elicit the responses to create healthy relationships with food. But they need to recognize within themselves on what's happening until we can get to a point, if they can admit that they have this issue, is that they do seek help. So this is where, you can have these little blurry lines between, what the role of the coach is when it comes to, helping with this.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, lifting and training is a. mean, we're going down a rabbit hole here that's away from elite lifting, but it goes hand in hand.
It all goes hand in hand. Like it's the simple things that you may have. Thing is, elite lifters is no different than training the general population, except they have a different mindset.
Got you.
And a lot of the trainers I have, a lot of the athletes I have made to elite lifting started with me as someone who was of the general population.
Right.
So the same principles that I help with the elite is the exact same principles I use with the general population.
Yeah, because they work for both, right?
Yeah. It's just the method or the execution is different for each person, and the problems we have to solve is different.
Right. So, this makes it complicated for anybody listening who is amateur enthusiast. It's just a gym rat, right? They want to make I guess, kind of like me, yeah. So they're not looking to be an elite lifter, right? They just love to lift.
Mm-hmm.
Where do they start? Like, what should they look at? I mean, I guess a good question to ask is, what are the main things that people not get wrong, but what's usually the first thing that they have to adapt for the general population? Is there anything that stands out
in terms of
the nutrition and diet?
So I think the biggest thing I see is them recognizing what their goals are.
Right. Okay.
And it seems simple, but it's actually quite hard, because you'll have someone who comes in with a very particular goal, and they say, "I want to get strong." Okay. Well, there's a little method I do is that what is more important to you? Looking good, getting strong, or moving better, or something like that. And it's like, I want all of them.
Yeah,
it's like course. No, but what's more important to you?
Do you find that most people say they want to be strong, but then after you probe, they really want to look good and be strong at the same time? But it's the look good.
Exactly. And then a lot of the times it ends up being that's their major motivation.
Got you.
They've just seen people who are strong and look good, so they want to get strong. It's like, no, you just want to look good. Now you have another part of that where people are strong, or people want to get strong. I use that same question. They want to be strong, but all their language points to them wanting to look good. So they also need to recognize that too. The method wouldn't change too much. My method will be the same, except some of the prescription and execution of it, and my approach to coaching and what measurements I'm going to take to keep them accountable is going to start to be different.
Right, because you can keep them better motivated if you talk in terms of body fat and things like that. Mm-hmm. If you know that that's their main motivation, you're going to obviously reward them on those measurables a little bit more, maybe, than just kind of weight lifted. And
I'd just be a little bit more, I guess, a bit more detailed about what's more important.
Yeah.
So, with a lot of the elite lifters, it's not crazy important to be perfect with your diet, except just being consistent.
Yeah, of course.
And so if they're off track, okay, so an athlete from 3 years from now, from day one, is different. So if I give them a diet, they mess up, and then I'll go off splurging or something. It's like, okay, we recognize here's this problem. Here's some tools you can use to address that. And then 2 or 3 years down the track, they have so many tools up their sleeves is that they just know how to stay consistent majority of the time. And if they mess up, they know how to get back on track, or they know how to make the best substitutions, and so on and so forth. So it is not imperative that they are absolutely perfect. They just need to be heading constantly in the right direction. Now, someone with body composition who wants to make extreme rapid changes is like, okay, so then I need to put more emphasis on their discipline towards that nutrition. And then start to build a relationship between, extreme dieting for changes and then just general approach to nutrition. So this brings me to my, I guess, another step that I use is that there's a little pyramid. I show people that there are 3 stages to diet. That you have what's called comp prep diet, a diet that make rapid results, and what everyone does. It's all the fads. It's the keto diet. It's the calorie deficit. Then you have, I would say, the middle one, which I tend to call clean eating. I don't like the word clean, but I'll call clean eating, meaning that we'll eat foods that follow, I guess, particular principles, but they're all good, high quality foods. quite interchangeable. We're eating plenty of rice, potatoes, or different types of starchy carbs, different types of meat. We're eating 3, 4, 5 meals a day. They're quite balanced, but we're kind of putting in whatever we want. We have 2 or 3 cheat meals. We have a couple of glasses of wine, but we have respectable principles that we follow that don't get us way off track. And if we do get off track, it's like massively, then we know, okay, it's just one day. Let's get back on track. And then you have the third layer, which is kind of more, okay, so in that clean eating, we can also stick to a training program quite well because we're kind of relatively healthy, still following our calorie intake, basic macro breakdown, have enough protein, etc. Then you got instinctive eating. I will say is the last one, which requires a high level of education. So this is not having a diet, but being quite intuitive with your lifestyle, the way you feel, and your training performance. So you wouldn't have any sort of guide. You just know a lot about nutrition to head in the direction, and you have to master all 3 to be really good.
Right, and this is where the elite athletes, when they get to stage 3, they're basically so used to listening to what their body needs that they can kind of self-administer. Whereas somebody like me doesn't. I'm more trying to work out I'm trying to trick the body sometimes, right?
Yeah.
I can't interpret the signals properly.
Well, you need to know how to move between all 3 constantly. So when it's time to go hard, then you move to comp rep.
Right.
You move to a stage that's going to create rapid results.
Got you.
Because then what people think is they have to go to that 100%. And then what do you do with that 100%? When they do, it's like, okay, cool, I'll go back to normal. But your normal eating isn't good.
Yeah.
Okay, you need to change that so that your instinctive eating, when you're off plan, is a healthy relationship with food, and there's something that is going to maintain that progression. Like how you said, it's like I have one chocolate and I just go out.
Yeah.
Okay, that is not going to create a successful athlete.
No, of course.
Okay, or successful changes in composition, because we need to find something that's sustainable. And to be more mentally sustainable, we need to learn how to move between all 3, because the other 3 are quite maintainable, but requires a lot of information. Now, me as a coach, I have to educate them, and they have to learn it is best learned through lessons, life lessons. So they'll make these mistakes. I give them tools. They use those tools, and then over time, they develop as an athlete to become better.
Right. Okay. So basically, you can have, pardon the pun, but you can have your cake and eat it. Like basically, you can eat cheat meals. You can eat shit, but as long as you are smart with it, cycle it properly, and move through the stages when you need to in link with the training, you're okay. The problem is that people go, I know that there's probably a problem with a lot of people going all in on the crazy fad diets, long period of time, completely unsustainable mentally and physically. And then, I know a lot of people who just don't eat carbohydrates. Like they just haven't for like a decade. They're just always in that, and they're terrified to kind of come away from it. That can't be good.
It really, there's so much things. I would say everything depends. There are small pockets. There are outliners, but
well, those are the people we all tend to kind of look to and go, oh well, I want to be like that person. It's like, well, that person gets out of bed at 10% body fat. You know that kind. That's the obvious example that everybody sees. Because
this is why everything's individualized.
100%, yeah.
And how we know what to do, and actually, there's going to be a podcast for later. Is that profiling that we may use?
Right. Yeah.
We need to put people in various categories, and in those categories, we get an idea about the method. Regardless of those profiles, though, it is still being responsive to the scientific method.
Yeah.
If we're having more carbohydrates and that doesn't elicit a great response, that person might not be very, very well responds to carbohydrates. Cool. And they may need to be at immediate. So myself, I don't respond to high carbohydrates.
Right.
I find, I can perform quite well between, 350, 400 grams of carbs, where I have some of my other clients on about 600 grams of carbs before they start to make progress. Different body types. He will have trouble putting on mass where I don't. I have no problems putting on size. I find it a lot harder to get lean.
Of course.
I know how to get lean because I know what I've done, what I respond to, and I know how to do that without it impacting my training too much and without being in huge deficits. It's that, again, for me, that's been trial and error, and that's been something that I've had to put experiments on myself.
And your motivator, just to go back to the 3 motivations, yours is strength, right? Yeah. So that's the other thing. Psychologically, you're not desperate to be lean anyway.
No.
So it's just kind of a balance thing.
For me, it's just not being massively out of shape.
Yeah.
I only, if it took me to be 140 kilos to get 1,000 kilo total, I'd do it.
Yeah.
And I've done that many times. I think I got up to 138 kilos, and my sole purpose was to hit the 900 kilo total.
Okay.
Didn't quite make it that comp, but I would have come close if I didn't miss a few of those lifts. And was that a healthy thing to do? No, it was highly specific for that goal. I've also realized, being that heavy, that there is a diminishing return to just being heavy.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
I can perform better. I'll have different better leverages for lifting with certain body composition. So now I'm motivated by improving my leverages. So I'm going to now reduce my body fat.
So in terms of the science of the lifts themselves,
the mechanics change if the weight changes.
I never thought of that. But that's what I mean. People are just obsessed with it. If I'm bigger, I'll lift bigger.
It's not always the case.
Right. So what are your... Here's an interesting one. What are your thoughts on eating windows? So there's more and more traction gaining with intermittent fasting now. I actually found I had pretty good results just basically waiting off till lunch and just having all my calories in the afternoon.
It always comes back to the same principles, is that people will end up having more controlled caloric intake when there's intermittent fasting. Because there's only a smaller window to eat.
So they basically, it's not the intermittent fasting part of it. It's just that they happen to eat less because of the eating window.
Yeah. So I have experimented a lot with this, and first, I think intermittent fasting can work for some people in terms of improving body composition.
Yeah.
If I have someone on quite low calories, we might do intermittent fasting, but not intermittent fasting in terms of that intermittent fasting makes progress, except I just shorten their window of eating so they don't have, they're not just having 200 calories or 300 calories per meal over 6 meals. They prefer to have a big meal. So it really does depend on that individual. However, I have seen results on long periods of intermittent fasting where there are only very short windows of eating, yet the average calories over a week are the same. So I've done some fasting protocols with people where we look at some of the windows over a week. So they can be quite difficult. So you might have up to 20 hours, even up to 30 hours.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Of not eating. I don't recommend this, especially for performance.
Yeah.
But there are I've seen some benefits in terms of increasing insulin sensitivity. Even protein synthesis apparently has shown that we can improve the sensitivity of muscle protein synthesis if there are periods of fasting. Overall, again, we just come back to the macro scale of things when it comes to performance. It is a horrible choice to try and fast, and it is one of those things that are categorized in the higher end of that, I guess, comp prep ranges of dieting methods. It is one of more of the extreme that you do because we're sacrificing something else to improve only something that's highly specific. Again, we want to try and have everything work as that one synergistic system, so that any variables we make in that system, we can control.
Right. So you would never have an athlete train fasted, right?
Never.
Right. So I've heard this a lot. Okay. Apparently, there's a subreddit on Reddit called Keto Gains, right? Mm-hmm. Which I find ridiculous because I could never gain anything on keto. No. But one of the principles is you train 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and you train fasted. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of people then extend that window and eat at midday afterwards.
I think the principles behind this is they're trying to manipulate various biochemistry or certain chemistry in the body that in a fasted state that they're utilizing more fats. In keto, we no longer use glycogen. We're breaking down fatty acids to create ketones.
Yeah.
And so in the state that we're breaking down more body fat within these time frames. So let's at this certain period, we're utilizing more calories by training, and so that we utilize more body fat for energy. Now, however, the overall effect is still really the mathematics behind it is still the same. We're still just in a deficit, regardless of whether you did that or not. And then at the end of the day, you decide to eat in the calorie surplus in that 4-hour period, you're not going to lose body fat.
Right. So what you're saying basically is you can intermittent fast for 20 hours, right? And basically for your long-term goals, if you train immediately after your meal or in the fasted state, it doesn't really make a difference.
No. So the mathematics would show that,
but you'll lift less when you're fasted, right? Like
exactly. You're sacrificing performance for a small biochemistry gain.
Right.
And so, okay, what's the reward and loss on this? So if we eat carbohydrates before we train, we're more likely to improve our performance in that training.
Yeah.
All right, because we're going to have access to, if our blood sugars are high, all right, we have better access to that glucose to recover from sets and increase that performance. Now, what is the long-term benefits, or what is the immediate benefits of being able to have improved training? So it's like, okay, we're going to have increased metabolic output. We're going to improve strength, because we're going to have adaptation from that. We could improve muscle mass. Improving muscle mass will increase basal metabolic rate, which could lead to a higher thermic output to burn more body fat. So it depends on what approach people are looking for, that quick, immediate gain within that time frame, rather than looking at the long-term benefits of weight training. And in the end, you want to build a machine that burns fat, builds muscle, and gets strong.
Yeah.
And when you eat nothing and train, you're training to be weak. You're
that's a good point, right? Like, your body. I think one lesson I've learned is your body kind of adapts to the whole rather than the micro. So this is the point where if you're 90% of your meals are excellent and 10% aren't, it's going to adapt to the 90. It's more about the consistency. Mm-hmm. I mean, my experience with training fast, it's interesting. So I still train fast. I just prefer doing it. It's more like a timing thing life-wise for me. Mm-hmm. If I don't do it first thing in the morning, I don't train. Mm-hmm. I can't seem to. Shit adds up through the day, through work or whatever. And by the time I get home, I've got nothing left in the tank, and I'm like, I can't be bothered, So if I do it as soon as I get up, my adherence is better. But if I tend to lift to a heavy triple, right? I can't back that set up at all. Mm-hmm. I basically, once I go to a heavy lift, it's over. It's like it's just all gone then.
We just look at the things that we can do before we train. I mean, getting something small in, like, a banana, or what's something that we can digest within that short time frame, and that could be a piece of fruit. And during training, having some liquid carbohydrates like a Maximus or something. So, again, the goal there is that we want to improve that performance, and having some sort of blood sugar, like having from Maximus, is going to improve your performance. And you might not be able to have a huge meal before it, but you can do something.
Right. Yeah. But it's always better to have something in the tank if you're looking for training outcomes, right? Like,
if your outcome is performance, building muscle, or losing fat,
and if you want to build that machine, right, you got to do it right. Okay. So last thing. We've gone a little while. So the last thing I want to address is hydration, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the one thing when I was studying. So I studied applied sports science. This was, when was this? Like 12 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. But it was more a course to work with elite athletes who are, Olympics, kind of like sprinters, pole vaults or whatever, or team sport athletes. So it wasn't I never really studied purely for powerlifting, things like that. But obviously strength and conditioning was a major part of it. And it was coming more and more into the team sport world then. The one thing that was massively stressed when I was studying the nutrition side of it was hydration. But it's not spoken about. Like if you go to any of these, for anything talk about nutrition, they never speak about the hydration side. Is that something you focus on? Do you think it's not that important, or
it's definitely important. Like coming in dehydrated is not the way to go. We had a habit I got my athletes to do is to weigh themselves before they train.
Right.
And if you're at your training weight, then you're most likely to be hydrated and ready to go.
Right.
If you're underweight for any particular reason, then we know it's most likely going to be caused by dehydration.
And so you got to top that up before you train.
Yeah. So that's, I guess the standard protocol for that is they usually normally have about 600 mils about 60 minutes before they train with some sort of electrolyte, salts, or carbohydrates.
Yep.
And that should be enough to start getting you hydrated, or start the process whilst you start drinking some more water, electrolytes and stuff during training.
Yeah.
But for each individual, it really is dependent on the individual themselves. Being consistent is key here.
Yeah.
If we're changing the intake of water or having something that might dehydrate us, like something like alcohol, then we're constantly changing our electrolyte balance and the way we retain water and all this stuff. So it's mainly just being consistent, and there's no magic formula other than the science has shown that drink to thirst. There's two things: have access to water and drink to thirst. The thing is, people will not drink, not on purpose, but because they just don't have access. And that can be as simple as having a glass of water next to you, or a bottle that you constantly have access to, so you can keep drinking. And when you're thirsty, just drink. It's simple. We have some visitors here.
That's all good. No, come in.
Come in.
Yeah. We're finishing up anyway. Just doing a quick podcast. You're all right. You're all good.
What were you saying?
Hydration. Yeah, so I hear a lot of bullshit around 3 liters a day, 2 liters a day. There's all these like magic numbers thrown around. The other thing is people tend to not drink water, right?
Actually, think about this. Like, a lot of that stuff is actually motivated by companies who sell hydration supplements, such as Hydrolite or Gatorade and stuff. So it's like you have to drink this much over a certain period of time. It's so they drink more of their product,
right?
But no matter how much you try to fix that, or try to find this magic formula, thirst is your best indicator.
Right. Okay.
And your body weight. So weighing yourself before and after training.
Right, of course. And another subject we'll get onto in the future, we're going to speak with a lifter who's had interesting run-ins with weight cuts. And obviously you'll manipulate water intake a lot there.
You're manipulating sodium electrolyte balances in the body, and
that's another subject. We're going to bring in a lifter who's been very successful there to discuss that in the future. But I
think I wanted to go over one more thing.
Yep.
Was just maybe a quick cheat sheet on what people can do.
Right. So that's what I was trying to get at before. If I don't have a coach, I'm not an elite lifter. I'm training in my spare time around work. Okay. I want to be strong and I want to look good. Those are usually the two main factors. What am I generally doing wrong as a general member of the population, and what are some things I can easily apply?
So let's talk specifically when it comes to just strength training.
Yep.
All right. First thing is finding what your calorie balance is. There are simple formulas online you can utilize, or even something as simple as these Apple Watches. They tend to find out your caloric output in a day. And so once you find out what that caloric balance is that we're at least hitting that as a target at a minimum. And again, this is just a general principle. Another general principle And this applies to athletes as well. Mostly likely in the off season. When in on season, coming into competition, I generally aim for a slight surplus.
Yep.
But we manage and track body composition to ensure that the food is can generally tell us what the food is doing to the body.
Yep.
If we're losing muscle mass, it's most but still gaining weight, again, that just shows that we're having a high stress impact on the body.
Right.
So again, let's come back to these simple principles. Let's say we look at 3 to 5 meals per day, whatever works best with your lifestyle. There's no magic number. Eating frequency doesn't change too much in terms of body. The studies have shown that hasn't changed too much in terms of body composition, but can impact energy levels.
Right.
So I find at least 3 to 5 meals per day is going to be the best. So it's dividing your calories up over those meals. So if you have to have 3,000 calories a day over 5 meals, that's what 600 calories per meal or something like that. And then some simple formulas you can follow. Protein is normally at least 1.6 to 2.4 grams or something, 2.2, 2.4 grams of protein per kilo of body weight.
Right.
So if I'm 100 kilos, you want to have 160 to 240 grams.
Right.
If you're just looking at maintaining at absolute bare minimum, go for the lower end. All right. Having more doesn't increase any more muscle mass. It's a good tool to use if trying to manipulate body composition. But again, if we're just strength training, 1.6 is plenty.
Right.
Plenty.
Interesting.
50% of your 50% of your calories should be carbohydrates. Generally 45 to 50% should be carbohydrates. It's a major source in terms of recovery, energy you use in the gym.
Yep.
Timing those carbohydrates around training so that we have enough carbohydrates before we train.
Yep.
And even some intra training carbohydrates can help. Not necessary, but it can help with managing energy levels. And generally quite a high intake of fat. Now, I'm not saying extreme levels of fat, but higher than what most people would prescribe in a typical diet. I'm saying in between probably around about 30% of your calories should be from fats. This massively assists with recovery, hormone output. So it's the major source in terms of helping the body produce testosterone.
Right, which is huge for body composition and strength gains. Yeah.
And so that's basically what the literature would show on, I guess, the basic principles on maintaining or increasing strength.
Right, and so what? One of the things I'm pulling from that then is don't keep your nutrition and your training separate. Eat to train, right? So your diet should be geared around your training, and you know that if you're getting stronger, and you can increase the kind of your training level, the body composition side's gonna kind of work itself out, right? For the general person, that's a good thing. So that's why if you eat more to train more, you'll probably have positive body composition results. And the mistake that most people make is they think
confusing body composition with weight.
Right. So I want to cut body fat. Yeah. So my nutrition should be this, but I'm still training the same way, and they're both kept very separate. Have people actually? Have you actually tried eating in a calorie surplus and see if you lose body fat? Have you And that's the thing. Is like, well, how do you know if you haven't done it? So we always try to take the path of least resistance. Yep.
And see how far in that direction I can go. So then we have plenty of tools to work with down the track. So if we need to go on a calorie deficit, then that tool's still there, and it's going to be a lot more beneficial because we have adapted the body to eat more calories, which is then going to increase that person's metabolic output. Yep.
Right.
So this manipulation of adaptations that we know occurs in the body, or which we call, I guess, homeostasis.
Yeah.
I would say probably the number one key that I would focus on with this then, in terms of a rule of principle of trying to get person to eat more calories, is trying to create homeostasis at a higher intake.
Yep.
And in the opposite direction, if we're really lean, how do we create homeostasis at a lean composition?
Yep.
So you got to look at the differences between what are you doing to sustain a particular outcome, and then what are some of the small changes we can make to adapt that person to eat more food at that leaner composition. And then there's certain principles of reverse dieting or simple training methodologies that would increase that person's, again, metabolic output or just purely gaining muscle, or many tools again.
Right. Okay.
And this is coming up with a strategy for someone wanting to get very lean.
Right, and there's heaps of TDE calculators online, but
they're always starter points. They're never.
Yeah, people think like scientific methods, and it just asks basically height, weight.
Yeah. So again,
age.
That's based off a large population study, and we've just extrapolated that data to an individual.
Yep.
The thing is, you can't apply a broad spread, a one fits all for one person. It's a starting point because the research has shown that, okay, these group of people on average need about this much calories for this amount of output, but every single person's different. So you can use that as a starting point, but I actually have a tendency, not me personally, it's like for everyone else, like that's a good starting point. For me, I actually try and break down each part. So I actually look at all their activity throughout the day, how much training they're doing, and how much food they're doing, having, and then what do I need to change from point A that they're doing now to make some sort of change in the right direction.
Right. So
instead of just going hardcore into something.
100%. So what you're saying is, instead of coming out of nowhere with a number, completely changing your diet, completely changing your training, you look at what they do, what they eat, and what they do during training. Then if your outcome is to increase their 3 lift total, okay, you would then start to manipulate those factors towards that, rather than scrapping everything, going from scratch, finding a TD calculator and just...
Yeah, so they can just be tools you use as a guide.
Got you.
So if let's say we're 500 or 1,000 calories below what your TDEE is, and you've been in that deficit for a very long time but haven't made any change, then I know this person has an adaptation to a lower caloric intake, and that they have a slow metabolic output. So I have to start adapting that person to head in that direction to get them to more of an ideal position, so they are more of a fat burning machine.
Got you. Okay. So don't just fucking starve yourself, people. And don't worry about the fad diets. All right, mate. Well, I think that was awesome.
That was good.
We smashed out about an hour there. Yeah. All right. Well,
until next time.
Thanks. That's the first episode wrapped up. More to come.
Cool.
Bye, mate.